Because I have a bias, and I think we all share this bias, which is to say, which suggests that actually having our beliefs track reality, however loosely, is better in the long run than being delusional. Okay, now you can carve out for me this kind of island of bliss, delusional bliss, which may be a counterpoint to where we're tending to go, and maybe it actually is maybe it actually is more pleasurable in some sense, but it's certainly fragile and vulnerable to the insults of reality. So all the people who are the Orthodox Jew. There's no way that fundamental Christianity and Orthodox Judaism is a sufficiently robust software package to be running on your brain to be the perfect circumstance of human flourishing. I just think that's. I think it's impossible given the requirements of living in this world together, and given how responsive we want to be given the utility of science, given the utility of actually knowing how diseases spread and knowing how old
Okay, but now you've got two criteria. Your whole argument had a kind of a precision to it when it was there's only one criterion: human well-being. No, we can measure it, and we can measure it in the brain. So let's just add it up, and whichever one is the highest wins. But now you're adding a second criterion.
I'm not adding a second one. I'm saying that the human flourishing will tend to be maximized by, at the very least, having your beliefs about your emotions track the way that the actual reality of your life, the material reality of your life, your actual situation in the world. So you ask me, well, why not just, if it's all about well-being, why not just take heroin all day long? Just get enough heroin and just lie on the couch. Well, or why wouldn't I, if let's say we came up with a pill that could make me indifferent, like make me feel joy when bad things happen, say, wouldn't my welfare be maximized then? Well, no. Well, then so I could take a pill that would make me happy even when my daughter drowns in the bathtub. Okay. Why wouldn't taking that pill be a good thing? Well, but look at all of the other pieces that move when you take that pill. I mean, in what sense could I still love my daughter if I'm indifferent to her drowning in the bathtub? And so when you look clearly at what we mean by love and what we value in life and the kinds of experiences we want to have both alone and together, then you begin to want to track reality. Now, if the singularity is true and we all upload ourselves onto the internet 20 years from now, then things change in a different way. And then in some sense, we all are on this island of delusion where we can just sort of manufacture any experience we want. And then, maybe Orthodox Judaism is the right move in that context. But yeah, right.
Very, very wonderfully thought-provoking talk. I used to read a lot of moral philosophy, and one of the last and best things was McIntyre's book, After Virtue. And he said morality has been functional, hence your analog to the banking crisis and so on. But the problem of morality in modern life is that the function of it sort of got removed. He said traditionally in Western intellectual history it was three elements. There was a concept of human nature as it was born in its untutored state, a concept of what one could be if one fulfilled one's telos and so on, which we got mainly from Christianity, and then moral rules, which were a way to pass from the one state to another. He said after the Enlightenment and the secularization, we knocked out the Christian element of what one should and could be, ultimately, and so that left us with just the concept of untutored human nature and a bunch of rules, moral rules, but no real reason to follow those rules. And so it's sort of been floundering since for a reason. Why should people do what's morally right? What I hear you saying, and it's very inspiring thought, is that maybe we can turn to science to come up with a new version to replace what is the flourishing, and hence some of these descriptions of, are they having the right kind of happiness, and is there more than happiness, and so on. Well, that's a bit of the struggle for reconstructing that missing element in the moral triad. But, right.
Yeah, but part of what I'm advocating is that we just start the conversation from a different place. We started this conversation with moral talk, and then we're trying to sort of bridge it to science and well-being and other things we care about, and many people are worried that something is left out. But I'm saying that what if we just started, forget about morality, what if we just were concerned about human flourishing as fully and deeply, not just human flourishing, the flourishing of conscious systems. So we're worried about anything that can suffer and anything that can experience happiness to the degree that it can suffer and experience happiness. So we're more concerned about squirrels than we are about flies, and we're more concerned about chimps than we are about squirrels. And our concern tracks a hierarchy a hierarchy based on our sense of just what it's like to be those things. And then we're going to talk about, okay, what do we know about how experience is born of the laws of nature and complex systems, and let's figure out how to maximize the well-being of conscious systems. And if we built computers that could suffer, well, then all of a sudden we would have a concern about their suffering. And at a certain point, someone can come in and say, well, okay, well, what about morality? What about values? What about all of these other things? What I'm saying is that as long as we're talking honestly and open-endedly and searchingly about well-being, nothing is left out. And if you're going to say something is left out, it will find a place in well-being. I think it's up to the people who say it won't to prove that. I don't think it's up to us to prove that human flourishing and the flourishing of conscious systems matters, or that is actually the context in which we should have this conversation. Yeah.
I find your argument for moral realism pretty persuasive and really nicely thought out. But there's another argument I think you're trying to make, and I disagree with it, but I'm not, which is that science can actually solve real-world problems, the real-world moral problems of the sort that we struggle with.
Right.
So one example you give is, how much should I give to charity? I give some of my money to charity. I give some of my money for my kids, for luxuries for my kids, private school, toys and games and everything. What's the right balance? And it occurs to me that, and I'm interested in what you think about this, that this is sort of question which science isn't going to help us. What science could give us, to an increasing degree of precision, is a description of what the world would be like. People's minds, people's happiness, if I do option 1 versus option 2, if I do 10% versus 40%. But it may be a failure of imagination on my part, but I'm not sure whether science says we have discovered that 30% of your salary is the right amount to give to the Africans.
Right, right. And it may not be, there may not be an answer like that. I mean, there could be 30% for you and 35% for David, and modulo differences in your lives and in your thinking and ultimately in your brains. Yeah, science I mean, there are an infinite number of questions that have very straightforward right answers that science will never get a purchase on. But what the crucial point for me is that the moment we admit that there are right and wrong answers, whether or not we can ever get them in hand, that changes the way we think and talk about the data space, and the possibility of understanding. So, for instance, I'm having this conversation in the context of an intellectual community and a scientific community that basically thinks morality is just made up. I mean, it's